Hello everyone, my name is Jeff Neville and welcome to Selective Imagery. I started taking pictures when I was 7 or 8 years old, and I really shoot just about everything. And here's some samples of what I take, whether it be sunrises, alligators, birds. It's what I do a lot of right now. But I also do macro. I'll do small animals, and I'll do street photography, and I'll use my old cameras to take some black and white photos with. So here's a sample of one of my cameras coming up. So I'm a generalist, but right now I'm focused a lot on wildlife and birds in particular. So I hope you enjoy my channel, and let's get right to the show. Welcome to the Arca Swiss adapter and TT Artisan lens review. Hi gang, this is Jeff Neville from Selective Imagery. As you may know, I recently did a video on tripod heads, and one of the ones I talked about was a brand new Manfrotto Model 608 Nitro Tech video fluid head that I purchased for doing videos with. And that is a counterbalanced system. Everything is very smooth for doing video. And I guess if you wanted to say, is there a negative to that? Well, for some people the negative would be, unfortunately, the plate that you have to mount to your camera. Manfrotto has proprietary plates. They're not Arca Swiss compatible. So you either buy their plates and mount it on the feet of your camera, or you have to adapt and convert this so that you can use all your lenses that have probably either replacement Arca Swiss feet on them, or where you've added an Arca Swiss plate to your camera lens foot already. Now, when you look at this, you have numbers basically 0 through 6 and minus 1 through minus 6, and each of those full increments is 3/8 of an inch difference in spacing. Okay, and then when you look at what would be mounting on your actual foot of your camera, you have, in this case, I've got 2 1/4-inch screws that were used, and you have this like rubber plug, and you push this plug in and rotate it out of the way, and then you can slide, you could slide these threaded screws off that rail and put in the larger 3/8 inch size if you want to use that. So we're going to convert this plate so that we can use it for Arca Swiss. So what I ended up buying, and this was Scott Keys, who has a YouTube channel, gave me this information. And this is a Kirk model QRC-4.2 EK. Here's the packaging. I haven't taken it out yet. Okay, and we're going to pop this out in a second. Give you a little bit closer up view of it. And here you go. Okay. It has multiple hole sizes in it. It has a bubble level on it. It has graduations. Okay, a 0 point. Okay. So I'm going to look and see if this 3/8 inch, which would be more robust, if there's a hole size in here that would accept this 3/8 inch screw. If there is, fantastic. If there's not, it's not the end of the world. So I'm just, okay, so this is looking at the bottom, and as you can see, there are a couple hole sizes that are tapped for the 3/8 inch threads. So I'm going to remove these, and what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to attach those 3/8 inch screws up through the bottom of the Manfrotto plate. So that's going to take me a second. I'll pop this little rubber plug that I talked about, swing it out of the way. I'll show it to you in a second on the back. Okay, I swung it out of the way. Now I can slide these screws and pop them right off the rail. Okay, put in the larger one, slide it down on the rail, and then swing this rubber plug, push it in place, and the screws will not fall out. Okay, so when I'm looking at it, there's my thread sticking up. Now what I need to do is to thread it into this piece, and we'll be all set. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set it up so when you look at the scaling, you see where you have the two arrows, and then you have -1 and a +1. So where those two arrows are is basically the center line. Okay, that is the center line of this. So I'm going to match up the center line of this Kirk device with the center line on that Manfrotto plate. So we're going to give me a second to line things up. Okay, so now it's not tight. I haven't tightened it yet. But okay, there's the 3/8 inch screws, and there's the Kirk plate on top of the Manfrotto plate. Okay, and what I noticed I just did, stupid me, is I have the knob facing the wrong direction. So I'm going to have to flip this. These are those TV moments, right? Yeah, when you pick up and tighten these threads, by default I mean, it's hard to get it exactly because you can't see the zero line on the scale on the Kirk, and it's not like it's engraved underneath, but you're going to try to eyeball it, get it as close as you can. And I like this little tool that they sell on B&H that has the Allen wrench, you know, for like tripod legs on one end, and then it has the flat blade for, you know, when you have those slotted screws. And I usually just put that on my key fob rather than throw it in my camera bag. And if this is going to be a permanent thing, you could always even add a little bit of Loctite if you're basically never going to remove it. But in the end, okay, here's how it ends up. just like this. Okay, so now once I drop this plate into the tripod head, I could just, you know, back off on this knob, put in my lens with the Arca Swiss foot, tighten it up, and I'm all set. And that's it. You know, I mean, this is the only Manfrotto plate I need to use is the one that came with the tripod, and I convert it. All said and done, I don't have to go out and buy Manfrotto plates to put on all my lenses that have the Arca Swiss Compatible feet now. I just have this adapter, and you know, yes, it adds a little bit of weight, and I will have to rebalance things, but that's a minor inconvenience because once everything's set up, it's going to be quick and easy to just put any lens on this tripod, and without spending a lot of extra money. A few more quick things about the Kirk Arca Swiss plate that I installed. If you tighten the screws too tight going into that Arca Swiss plate, then when you go to loosen the knob to open it up so you can fit your foot in there, it won't open up because you have too much pressure on the screws. It won't allow it to move. So you have to have the screws firm, but don't over tighten them. So if you are backing up the knob and you can't get your foot in there, it's because you've over tightened those screws. So that's something I want to share. And then Kirk also gives you what they call an optional anti-twist quick release screw, and here's a picture of it. Okay, basically it's just a threaded screw with a Allen wrench socket in it, and I put that in, but basically I let it stick up a little bit, and it basically acts as a stop so that if your plate loosens up a little bit and the foot slides forward, it's not going to slide right off the plate. So you can choose to use that or not use that. It's up to you. So in this image I'm showing you the Manfrotto foot extended slightly on the tripod head, and above that is the Kirk Enterprises Arca Swiss plate, and then you have the Arca Swiss plate that's mounted on the camera foot for my 800 PF. So that's the whole stack up there. But at least this way, any lens I have where I bought an Arca Swiss compatible either foot and or plate, I could just drop it right into that Kirk Arca Swiss compatible plate, tighten up the knob, and we're good to go. So just wanted to show you that image. So that's it. I'll probably attach another video after this one for another item I bought, and I will leave that as a surprise for you in a few minutes. So we will see you in a few. Thank you. For the next topic of discussion, I'm going to talk about this TT Artisan 100mm f2.8 macro lens that is 2x macro that I just received. I had it on pre-order on B&H. I received an email saying it was being discontinued. I contacted or went online to look at other camera stores such as Paul's Photo, Allen's Camera, Service Photo, and nobody was carrying this lens, and I could not find any information as to quote-unquote why it was being discontinued. I did find it on Amazon. They had a few left, so I took a chance and I ordered it on Amazon. So here it is, right here. This is the TT Artisan 200mm 2x macro tilt shift lens. It's an all-metal body, and this is just going to be a preview. I have not been able to do any really significant testing in the field. I did a few shots outside, and I did some experimenting in my quote-unquote studio surroundings to fool around with the tilt shift functionality so that I could talk a little bit better about what those features actually do. But it's an all-metal body. It's a completely manual focus lens. If you take the rear cap off, this is for the Z mount. I had it on the Z9. As you can see, when you look at the rear mount, okay, there are no electrical contacts. There is nothing that's going to provide information regarding what your f-stop is. So when you look through the viewfinder in the camera, it's just going to say F dash dash dash. Although obviously as you adjust the f-stop, you're going to see excuse me, your image lighten or darken accordingly. And you're going to be in manual mode. And what I do is I have it set up so I have everything turned blue when it's in focus in manual mode. And that works pretty good for me, but there's other colors that you can select as well. But this, when you look at this lens from the front, metal lens cap just pulls off. It has some friction. There's like some type of a grippy material lining the inside edge. And I'll tell you, when you put this on and press it on, there's no way it's coming off. I mean, you can shake this like you're mixing yourself a drink and it's not going to come off. So that's the good news. Here's what it looks like from the front. It's internal focusing, and there's a lot of bit of movement in there when you look at it when you focus. The focus ring is here on the outside. It's very well dampened. Okay, it's not sloppy. It's pretty firm, but not overly so. It seems to be just the right balance of what you want. And of course, you have the indicator markings on there as to, you know, where you are, how many feet, you know, it's set for the focus. And you have, you know, your depth of field indexing underneath, you know, shown. And you have another knob right here, which is for your f-stops, which go from f2.8 to f22, and they're in half stops from 2.8 up to f11. You'll have half stop increments, and it is all click. Nice clicking sound, very solid, very competent. I mean, very nicely made. Now, I know you're probably wondering, obviously, since it's a manual focus lens, there's no automatic features. You don't have function buttons on this lens like you would, you know, say a Nikon lens. It's autofocus, so you don't have any of that. You have these tapped holes that go around the circumference of this lens. As I turn it, you can see all these tapped holes. And if you're wondering what those are for, well, they supply you with, it's plastic, but it's a effectively, it's a cold shoe. So there's no electrical contacts here, but if you screw this down on one of those threaded pieces, what it does is it allows you then slide in something that has a hot shoe foot on it, such as a LED light panel, a small LED light panel, or sometimes you have a battery operated light that has like two arms that come out with LED lights so that you can adjust it for, you know, for macro shooting. So it lets you mount it anywhere on the lens that you want for putting a light on, and that's a pretty nifty little trick that they did. It's very busy looking when I turn this around. You know, you're going to see a lot of protrusions. Okay, you got that knob, you got another knob here, you got a lever here, you've got a metal, a screw, a knurled screw here that you can back off or tighten up. You've got a button here to push. So what is all this stuff? Well, that's all stuff relative to the tilt shift features. But before we get into that, because that's going to take a little bit of explaining, we'll talk a little bit about the specs. So it'll focus as close as 0.25 meters, which is 0.82 feet. I took some shots outside, like at f5.6. The bokeh looked wonderful. Looked very, very nice. Obviously, I said full metal body. It has the shift feature, can adjust 6 millimeters to the left and 6 millimeters to the right. The tilt feature is 8 millimeters, tilt up, down, or left, right. And you have a 12 aperture blade setup, which is really nice. 14 elements and 10 groups. It's very, very hard to find information on this lens in terms of what kind of coatings are on the lens. Other reviewers, a few that I have watched, have commented that, you know, it is subject to flare. And part of that, one of the negatives of the lens, is it does not come, you know, with an actual lens hood. So that's, to me, that's I would have rather had a conventional lens cap and a reversible lens hood. So that is a negative. And the ideal f-stop range, if you're using it for macro, seems to be wide open at f2.8 up to f8. Anything after f8, you could start seeing actually some softening effects due to diffraction. So you have to be aware of that. Now, obviously, you can use this lens just the way it is as a 2.8 portrait lens if you wanted to, and the results are halfway decent from what I have read. Okay, I have not yet done it myself. Let's see if there's anything else. The contrast is decent, but not exceptional. And if you stop it down a little bit, you get down to f8. The contrast is pretty good. Wide open, not so good. You know, only fair, I would say. And it weighs 29 ounces. It is not a lens designed to minimize focus breathing. So basically, if you're going to do any video, you know, focus on your subject. If you got a flower with a bee on it, get everything in focus and then hit your video button so you're not zooming it or trying to refocus it. And hopefully you'll get something decent. So now I guess we'll talk about the tilt and the shift functions. So let me get to, okay, this lever right here is your shift lock lever. So I am going to unlock that right now. And then this knob adjusts. You can see how you have let's see here, let me hold it this way. Okay, see the little bit wider marking in the middle? Okay, so that's telling you it's not shifted at all. Now I have it unlocked, so if I go and I turn this knob, and I'm going to face the lens towards you so you can see what's going on. Okay, and I'll tilt it sideways here, give it a little bit more light. Okay. That's where it's not shifted at all. That's shift one way. That's shifted the other way. Okay, you could see that. Now, if you reorientate the lens, then when you're shifting it, oops, let me get it right here. Then you could shift up and down. Okay, see, you could tell right there when it's flush, it's not shifted. Shift it up, shift it down. So I'm going to lock this off. I don't need to do that anymore. And so you're saying, well, why would I use the shift at all? Well, the shift allows you to do two things. If you are doing an architectural shot and your tendency is I want to fit the whole building in or small structure in, and you got the lens tilted up, then you always get where the top of the building, isn't straight up and down. So you want to basically fit in what you can of the building, or it could be a flowering shrub or whatever you want it to be. You have it so you got, you're getting the bottom part of whatever you want in the image, and then you adjust the shift function, which will bring in the entire plant or whatever you're trying to photograph. And there are limits because you only have the angle of view of a 100mm lens, so it's not like you have a 19mm wide angle, so you're going to be restricted by the just by the focal length of the lens. But you will be able to adjust things down and fit things in, into the viewfinder where you can see the whole thing for the most part, within the limits, okay, of the lens. So that's one thing you use it for, and that allows it so that the building is straight up and down, or you don't have any kind of a tilting look to it. Now, even more interesting than the shift function is the tilt function. Now, the tilt function, that has this knob here. Up here. This is the locking knob here for the tilt function. So I'm going to unlock that, and it has an arrow, so it shows you which direction is for locking it. And then this other knob is your adjustment. Now, depending on how you have your lens, I'm going to hold it sideways here, how you have the lens adjusted, okay, you're tilting down or you're tilting up. Okay. Now the negative, I'm going to hold it from the lens mount if I can. It can be a little bit harder. See, there's not enough resistance when this is mounted on the camera that when you're vertical, it isn't going to want to drop down. You're not going to use the tilt or the shift function hand holding this lens. It's going to be on a tripod, okay? So if it was on a tripod right now, you'd be adjusting it with the knob, on this side, and then you'd be locking it in position because the weight of the lens when you're vertical, it's just going to drop down. There's no way to adjust. There's not like there's a friction adjust. You either have it locked or it's not locked. Now, if the lens was rotated, that's a different story. If the lens is rotated, now you're tilting left to right. So now, that's going to stay because you don't have the weight trying to drop it down. But as soon as you go vertical, it's going to want to drop down. So you say, well, why do I care about the tilt function? Well, the tilt function allows you to change the plane of focus. And I know you're saying, what are you talking about? Well, with a conventional lens, or when you're not using the tilt feature, your focus plane, your plane of focus is parallel to your camera sensor. And what's in focus or not in focus is determined by your depth of field, what your f-stop is. Now, when you have a tilt functionality, you can change the plane of focus. The plane of focus does not have to be parallel. The plane of focus can be at an angle. So, an example of that would be, I have a bottle of my Lipton tea, and I have a cup. Well, let's say they're staggered, okay? One's closer, one's farther behind. I can adjust the plane of focus so this bottle is sharp and this cup is sharp, but the background is completely blurry because you're adjusting the actual plane of the focus. So that is something that is really cool to fool around with. Now, the best way to really demonstrate it for yourself is you type up 3 columns of numbers, letters, dots, slash marks, doesn't matter what it is, okay? But you have 3 columns. And depending on how you're tilting the lens, and let's say you got it so it's going to tilt up and down. Well, if you don't have it in the tilt mode at all, I would adjust my manual focus, and like I said, my focus peaking is set for blue. So all these numbers on this sheet of paper look blue when I look through the viewfinder. They're all in focus. Well, as soon as I am in the tilt mode, where I'm vertical up and down, I can make it so this top line is the only thing sharp and everything below it is blurry. I can make it so the bottom line is sharp and everything above it is blurry. If I'm tilting it left to right in the horizontal plane, I can make it so this column is sharp and everything in this direction is blurry. Or this column can be sharp, and everything in this direction is blurry. So that's the cool thing with using the tilt function. So it's really worth trying out. And I just wanted to kind of give you a preview. I think it's very well made. One more thing is what this screw adjustment is here. When you loosen this, okay, you can then push this button and rotate. You got this mounted on the camera. You can rotate the position of your knobs, and that's how you can rotate. So you're either tilting vertical or horizontal, or shifting vertical or horizontal. And then when you get that set where you want it, then you just tighten this up. And that's pretty much it. So I will share images probably in a future video. I'll have some macro shots. I'll fool around with the tilt feature. I'll fool around with the shift feature. And another thing that you could do with the shift is, because you could go left, center, and right, you could take 3 images and basically put them together like a panorama, and everything would be lined up perfectly. Okay, because you're not moving your tripod, you're not adjusting anything. All you're doing is moving a knob to the left, take a shot, center position, take a shot, right, take a shot. Then you can put it all together and have a nice pano. And that's about it. I mean, we'll see how this thing works out. The few shots I've taken, I've liked. And I like the build quality. And I think for typically a little under $400, it's worth the money, my initial impressions. And down the road, when I take some images, I will share them in a future video. But for now, you might want to consider this. Not as necessarily as your primary. I mean, the 105 macro for Nikon is like a super, super, super lens, but it is, 1-to-1. So if you want that 2-to-1 and have a little bit of fun experimenting with tilting and shifting for $400 approximately, this could be a fun little toy to play with. So on that note, we'll end the video. And as I always say, enjoy life. Capture some of it, irregardless of what you shoot. Get out there, take what you like to take. And until next time, God bless. We'll see you soon.